This week's parsha, Parshas Emor, has much in it, but I think that anyone going through the parsha could figure out on his own, on her own, what the topic for tonight would be. Because Parshas Emor contains the section which talks about the Yom Tovim, Pesach, and Shavous, and of course the Sphira, the counting of the Omer, which connects the two. We're holding in the period of Sphira. I'm not going to say what night it is tonight, because it didn't count yet.
It didn't count yet.
But this is the parsha it all comes from, so I thought I would speak a little bit about Sphira Sa'imah. It is axiomatic, it's a given, that the purpose of the days of Sphira is to connect Pesach to Shavuos. And the truth is that the Torah itself makes the connection in a very obvious way. If you go back to the book of Shavous, which talks about the TCS Mitzrayim, so there are four L'shonais of Geula. There are four expressions of redemption. This is why we have 4 cups of wine. The Torah says, I will take you out from under the burdens of Mitzrayim. I will save you from having to work. I will redeem you with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. I will take you for a people.
Take you?
For a people. So we have 4 expressions. I will take you out, and I will save you, I will redeem you, and I will take you as a people. What is the idea of these 4 different expressions? Are there 4 stages to the process? So the Maral says a very, very simple explanation. We've quoted it many times. If you go back, further back, to the Bris Bein Absarim, the covenant which God made with Avraham Avinu, and God foretold to Avraham the Egyptian enslavement. So he said, Yedoah Teda, you should know, Ki ger yeh zaracha be'eretz lo lohem. Your children will be strangers in a strange land. Va'avadum, they will be enslaved. Ve'inu oisam, and they'll be tortured. Arba me'ashon, for a period which, from beginning to end, will stretch 400 years. So God told Avram that there would be 3 stages. First would be a stage of gerus. You'd be strangers, not slaves, but you'd be in a foreign land. That itself has its disadvantages and discomforts. If people like the familiar, they like to be at home. To be an alien, that itself is a very, very, very upsetting thing. Then it will be intensified. It will become enslavement. Va'avadum. But enslavement isn't torture. And then v'inu oisam. Then it will escalate to torture. So there are 3 stages. There is gerus, being foreigners. There is avdus, being enslaved. And there's inu, is being tortured. And when God redeemed the Jewish people, he reversed these 3 gezeres. He reversed these 3 decrees. And in the same way that they were imposed incrementally, the Maral says they were relieved incrementally. It wasn't a one moment in which they made the transition from torture to liberty. In the same way that when they came to Mitzrayim, there were 3 stages. First, they lived as strangers for many, many years. Then they were enslaved, and only much later were they tortured. So likewise, when the decree was reversed, it was the same thing. It was also in stages. And that's what God promises. First of all, I will take you out from under the crushing burdens of Mitzrayim. That is a reversal of the torture. Then it says, I'll save you from having to work. That's a reversal of the enslavement. And then the Go'alti Eschem, I will redeem you with the strong hand and the outstretched arm. That is the reversal of the decree of being strangers. You'll no longer be a stranger. I'll take you out to the desert and ultimately to Eretz Yisrael. Well, that accounts for the first three expressions. What is the fourth expression? V'lokachti eschem li la'am, I will take you as a nation. When does that take place? That, says the Maral, takes place at Har Sinai. That takes place at Har Sinai. So in a sense, the process of redemption is only completed when the Jews come to Har Sinai, because becoming God's people is the tachlis, it is the objective, it is the goal. Nothing has any significance without that ultimate objective. Because what's the point of being free? What's the point of being free? For what? Right? Freedom is not merely relief from oppression. Freedom means the ability to take advantage of the opportunity to do something and make something of your life. So the freedom has significance only in the sense that it culminates with the Ma'amad Har Sinai, the revelation at Sinai, and our being given the Torah. And therefore, that is the fourth expression of redemption. The fourth and final stage of redemption takes place at Har Sinai. And therefore, there's a very deep connection between the TCS Mitzrayim and the Ma'amad Har Sinai. These aren't two separate things. The Exodus from Egypt and the giving of the Torah. The Exodus from Egypt only has meaning in as much as it culminates in the experience at Har Sinai. And therefore, to connect the two, to show that this is a process, there is a continuum, we count. We count. And the counting is not just breathless anticipation. If that were the case, then we probably should count down. You know, when NASA launches a rocket, there is a countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Because you're just waiting. So 10 seconds left, 9 seconds left, 8 seconds left, 4 seconds left, 2 seconds left, and we have liftoff. I don't know if it's still the case. When I was a kid, the newspaper used to print how many shopping days left to Christmas. Do they still do that? Starting in July. 20 days, 15 days, 10 days. There's a countdown. When it comes to Sfira Sa'imar, we count up. So why is that? We don't say 49 days left to Shavous, 48 days, 47 days. Today is the first day, the second day, the third day. What's the idea of counting up? The idea is very, very simple. If you're just waiting, you pass time. You count down. If you are preparing, if you're laying a foundation and building on the foundation, and then building on that layer, and building on top of that layer, and building on top of that layer, you are counting up. Now, these days between Pesach and Shavuos aren't simply days of anticipation. They are days of preparation. So you lay the foundation, then you build on the foundation, and you build on that layer, and on the next layer, and on the next layer, building a higher and higher and higher structure. That's the theme of these days. And that's why the count is a counting up. We ascend spiritually until we're ready for the giving of the Torah. So that really is the idea of the Sfira Sa'imar. And the question is, what does it mean to prepare? What does it mean to prepare for Kabbalah Satorah, to prepare for the Torah? Like, what does that mean? What are we meant to do? What are we meant to think about? I'd like to make a point that I think needs to be said. Sometimes we are so involved in what we are doing that we don't pause to appreciate how important what we actually are doing is. We don't reflect. Because we just get into a habit, a rut, a pattern, and we keep doing, but we don't really reflect how important, how beautiful, how special what we are doing is. I'll give you an example. Let's say Shabbos. Because we all keep Shabbos. And it's pretty much a habit. There's a routine. Friday, as it gets close to the Shabbos, there are things we have to do. We have to prepare the house, prepare ourselves, do the shopping, etc., etc., etc. But how often do we reflect, even for a moment, about the beauty of Shabbos, the honor of Shabbos, the holiness of Shabbos? We don't. We take it for granted. Because we go through the motions, but we don't pause to think about the chashivos, the significance of that which we are working for. And it's a tragedy. Because if we really would think about Shabbos and really appreciate Shabbos, probably our preparations would be different. They'd be more heartfelt, more passionate, more inspired. But there's a certain automaticity, if you will, to our preparations for Shabbos. Because week after week after week, it's the same thing. You do the shopping, and you make the cholent, and you get dressed. We can do it in automatic pilot mode without thinking. Pesach is a little better. It's only once a year. But we really have to sometimes pause and think about the chashivos, the importance of what we're doing. When it comes to Torah, it's the same thing. When it comes to Torah, we learn Torah, we hear words of Torah, we read books, but we don't pause to reflect, to think about Torah itself in a general sense. Because we think about specific topics in Torah. This week's parsha, next week's parsha, this Gemara that we may be learning, or this medrash they may have seen. But to think about Torah in a general sense, the importance of it, the beauty of it, the holiness of it, because we don't. And I think that certainly the hachana, the preparation for Shavous, necessitates that. Because we have to, in preparation for receiving and accepting the Torah, we have to reflect what Torah is. And there are really two dimensions to this. And I'll bring it out this way. There's a thought that I've repeated many times, but maybe we'll record it for posterity tonight. I heard this thought from Rav Simcha Wasserman and Zecher Tzadik Levracha. And he brought it out in this way. When a person is called to the Torah, we know there's a blessing that you say before you read, and there's a blessing that you say after you read. But the blessing before you read is Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim. The blessing after you read is Asher Nasa Manu Teres Etnos. And often, I shouldn't say often, but once in a while, you have a situation where the person is confused, and he reverses the blessings. So the blessing which should be said after he says before, and vice versa. So you wonder, how is it possible to remember? What's the trick? To remember which blessing you say when? And why is it that the blessing beforehand is one way and the blessing afterward is another way? Why are the blessings different? Say like this. He gave a mashal. Says, imagine a person gives you a present. Brings you a present. It's your birthday. Gives you a present. And I always say that no present is present unless it's wrapped. The wrapping is part of the presence of the present. So it's wrapped, beautiful paper, ribbon, nice bow, and you're presented with the gift. Certainly, at that point, it's appropriate to thank the benefactor for the gift. You don't know what he's giving you yet. Makes no difference what he's giving you. The mere fact that he's chosen to give you a gift, of all the people in the world he could have bestowed his gift upon, he bestowed it upon you. That itself is worthy of your expression of gratitude. You take the box home, and at your convenience, you open the paper and undo the ribbon. You see it's a beautiful whatever it is that you really always wanted. Just what the doctor ordered. And I'm reminded of a story that when heads of state visit one another, it's traditional to give presents. So the first time that Chaim Weizmann, the first president of the state of Israel, came to America after the establishment of the state, so he had to bring a present to President Truman. So what was the traditional present that Jewish leaders brought to heads of state? You're not going to believe it. A Sefer Torah. That was the traditional gift, a Sefer Torah. So Chaim Weizmann brought a Sefer Torah for Harry Truman. Now Harry Truman had no idea what this thing was. And presents him the Sefer Torah, and he lifts it up and says, "Gee, that's what I always wanted." But the point is that when you open the box and you see, in fact, that it is what you always wanted, then it's certainly appropriate to call the person back again and thank him a second time. You already thanked him the first time. The answer is very simple. The first time you thanked him for giving you a present. But now that you see what it is, and you can truly appreciate it, now you have to thank the person again. Before a person reads the Torah, when he's first called up, what is the blessing? Blessed art thou, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. You chose us from among all the nations, v'nosen lanu es Torasu, and gave us your Torah. That blessing says nothing about the Torah. The beauty of Torah, the wisdom of Torah. It merely states the following fact, that of all the nations in the world, you selected us to bestow upon us this gift. For that we have to be grateful. Of course, that is the blessing which comes before reading the Torah, because it's a blessing which makes no statement about the qualities of Torah, but the mere fact, Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, we were chosen from among all the nations to be given the Torah. Then you read. You quote the Torah, you read along with the reader, and now you learn a little Torah. So now you begin to understand. There's something here. How much do you have to read to come to this awareness that Torah is something special? You don't have to read a lot. The Chazal tell us that when a person is called to the Torah, it's only necessary to read 3 verses. That's it. 3 verses is enough. But you read 3 verses, now you have to thank God again, because I thanked him for giving me a gift. But now that I see what it is, so we say, Asher nasan lanu Torahs emes. Thank you, Hashem, for giving us a true Torah, the Torah of truth. Now you have to know, truth is hard to come by. You read the newspaper, it's all spin. You know that. And there was an amazing observation that was made before me. It was made before me by many very smart people. They said like this: whenever you read the paper, whenever there is an article on a subject about which you know something, you always discover that the article is chock full of mistakes. Right? Every so often, when you open the newspaper, there's an article, I know a lot about that subject, and you read it and you see the whole thing is baloney. The names are wrong, the dates are wrong, the information is wrong. So probably we should assume that everything in the paper is wrong. It's just I don't notice it because I'm only familiar with a few of the subjects. But there's somebody who knows something about every subject in the paper. So in the same way that whenever there's an article on a familiar subject, I know the paper is all wrong, probably somewhere in the world there's somebody who knows that every article is wrong. It's funny, I'll just mention this as an aside, maybe we'll want to cut this out. My daughter came home from school yesterday with an assignment. She had to research a subject. And it was the International Space Station. Very interesting subject. So she asked me for some help, online. So, you Google International Space Station, the first thing you get is the Wikipedia article on it. It's a massive, long article, 150 footnotes, well researched. So I said, here's that information. So my daughter says, no, the teacher said we can't use Wikipedia. Because why?
That's right.
Right? Because it's not reliable. So I said, listen, how important is it that you get your facts about the International Space Station right? And if there are a few mistakes in there, what's that time? You're not planning on going there. So there'll be a few mistakes. I think that's why we read the newspaper. In other words, of course, yeah, it's full of mistakes. It's full of mistakes. But what difference does it make? We're not really counting on the newspaper, right? Let's say there's an article about some new drug in the newspaper, right? A doctor is not going to prescribe it. Oh, today's Star, if they go mail, there was an article about this drug. I'm going to go prescribe it to somebody. Obviously, before you make a decision like that, you do a little more research. But MS, absolute pristine truth, is very, very hard to come by. But Torah is MS. Asher nasan lanu Torahs emes. That's a great praise of Torah, to think about it, that it is a repository of truth. And the key to eternal life has been planted in our midst. Meaning, there's something else special about Torah. That the study of Torah not only makes our lives in this world better, but it has the power to bestow upon us Olam Haba, eternal life. There's nothing else like that. If you go to the store and buy a cookbook, right, the cookbook is not going to help you in Olam Haba. There's no eating there. Olam Haba, Chazal say, Ein bo lo achila v'lo shasiya. There's no eating, there's no drinking. You don't need any recipes. Whereas the cookbook will only help you in Olam Hazeh. And many things are like that. But Torah is Chai Olam. And the interesting thing is that even though many of the things in Torah relate to this world, business halachas, and laws of damages, and so on and so forth, which have no practical application in the next world, but it makes no difference. It's the wisdom of the Ribono Shel Olam. And when you learn it and delve into it, your soul becomes eternal. So that's something very special about Torah. So it's not just that God selected us for a distinction. He gave us something very, very, very special. And that's why before you read, you don't know that yet. All you can say is, thank you Hashem, Asher Blach Arbanu V'Kol. After you read, you can make a statement about the Torah. I've already experienced it. Asher Nasan Lanu Torahs emes, you gave us a Torah that's true. V'Chai Olam Tapzachenu, an eternal life you planted in our midst. After hearing this thought, you can never make a mistake again. Let's say the wrong blessing in the wrong place. Because it's obvious. Once you understand the meaning of the blessings, it has to be this way. That's what we have to do. We have to prepare ourselves for the receiving of the Torah by reflecting upon Torah, and I think from these two dimensions. Number one, we have to think, what a distinction, what a badge of honor it is that we were selected from all the nations of the world to receive the Torah. Now, before I go a step further, Let me remove a misconception. Right? Many people think, wait a minute, Chazal don't say that. Chazal don't say that God chose us. Don't Chazal say that we were the only people that were willing to take it? Everyone else rejected it? That Hashem went to every nation and offered them the Torah and they said, no, thank you. No, the truth is that this really should be a contradiction in the words of Chazal. Because we know that that story is a medrash. It's a sifri in Parshas Bezos Bracha, which says that God went to every nation and offered them the Torah. All the other nations rejected it, the Jews accepted it. But on the other hand, the Chazal also were the authors of our tefillas, of our prayers. And in our prayers over Yom Tov, we said it again and again and again. Atov v'chartanu mikol ha'am. You chose us from among all the nations. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'am, we say every day in the Birchas Torah. So it seems that God chose us. So let me just tell you, the Maharal says a very important thing you should know. What is the meaning of this medrash? God went to every nation.
Yeah.
Is there any record of that? Any historical record? Has any member of one of those nations reported this experience of being offered the Torah? The Maharal says that that medrash is a metaphor. It's a mashal. What it really means is that before God gave us the Torah, He examined every nation in the world to determine whether there was another nation fit to receive the Torah. And He determined that there was not. There was only one nation fit for the Torah, and that was the Jewish people. Metaphorically, that process of determination that the other nations were unfit is described as an offer and a rejection. But that's only a mashal, it's only a metaphor. There never was an offer, there never was a rejection. It means HaKadosh Baruch Hu went around to check, is there any other nation that could possibly receive the Torah? And God determined not. So a nice way of expressing it is to say that God offered it and they said no. It never really happened. God never offered it and they said no. God determined that, let's put it this way, if they would be offered, they would say no. And there was no point in even offering. So it's still true, God chose us. Now there are many people, again, that are uncomfortable with this concept of chosenness. They think it's chauvinistic. So they try to say, well, it doesn't really mean that God chose us because we're special. God chose us because He wanted to give us extra responsibilities. That makes no sense. If you have a job that needs to be done, who do you pick? Someone at random? Or do you pick the person who's most likely to be successful? Because you look for the person that has the qualities that will guarantee success. Now that doesn't mean that the Jewish people are better than everybody else in every sense. But it means that in the particular set of characteristics that are needed to fulfill God's mission of Torah, God determined that the Jews are most suited. It may be that the French make better wine and better cheese. And it may be that this other nation is better at waging war. We're not saying that Jews are the best at everything. Others may be better architects. But for the particular mission that God had in mind, God determined that Avraham Avinu and his descendants were the most suited. And that's the Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'am. We have to understand that. We have to appreciate that. We have to understand that there is something in our makeup, in our spiritual genes, that makes us suited for receiving Torah and implementing God's plan. Then we have to reflect on Torah itself. Its beauty, its holiness, its sanctity. And these two together, thinking about the greatness of the Jewish people and the greatness of Torah, really can be reduced to one word, which is the idea of kavod. The idea of kavod. The honor that we have for a fellow Jew and the honor that we have for Torah. What does kavod mean? What does honor mean? Honor means the recognition of the uniqueness of something, of the distinction of something. When we disrespect something, we are declaring it's not special. There's no chashivas, there's no significance, there's no deeper value. Kavod is the recognition of a thing as having value. And to prepare for Shavous, we have to have the kavod, the regard and respect for a fellow Jew, and the kavod for Torah, a respect and regard for the value of Torah. Otherwise, if we don't reflect on these two things, we're not going to be ready. We're not going to be ready to accept the Torah. And it's interesting to know that each of these themes, I believe, plays a role in the lead up to Shavous and Shavous itself. Now, during the Yemei HaSfira, aside and apart from its being a preparation for Shavous, there's at first glance, a totally unrelated aspect, which is that the Yemei HaSfira are also days of mourning. We lament the loss of the students of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was really the pillar of Torah in his time. And the Gemara says that he raised 24,000 disciples, 12,000 pairs of students. It's an amazing thing. A yeshiva of 24,000 students. And it says, V'chula mesu b'perak echad. They all died at the same time of the year. The Gemara says it was mi Pesach ad Atzeres, between Pesach and Shavuos, in a single year. They all died. V'haya ha'olam shamim, and the world was desolate as a consequence. You think about it for a second. Nowadays, Torah is preserved in books. And the Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral law, is preserved in the Svarim. We have the Mishnah, we have the Gemara, we have the Shulchan Aruch, and so on and so forth. We have the Rambam. So it isn't the human mind which is the receptacle for Torah. We have shelves and libraries that contain Svarim. But that was only after the oral law was written. And of course, the first work to be written was the Mishnah, later the Gemara, later all the other Svarim that we have. But in the time of Rabbi Akiva, the oral law was not yet written. So what was the repository of Torah? The minds and memories of the Jewish sages. So there's a chain. There's a chain of tradition, a chain of Masorah. And if this chain is snapped, there is a genuine danger that Torah will be lost. Rabbi Akiva was the single link in this chain. He was the great disciple of his forebears, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, and he was the link in the chain transmitting Torah to the next generation. 24,000 Talmidim, they all died. Every last one. The world was desolate. There was a genuine danger that Torah would be forgotten. Until Rabbi Akiva came to Rabbi Seinu Shebedarim. It came to the great rabbis in the south, 5 great Chachamim. V'heim shemidu Torah b'Yisrael. They were the ones that restored Torah. But nevertheless, you can imagine the diminution. The Torah that would have been transmitted through 24,000 is now transmitted only through 5. And the Gemara says here, learn an important lesson from here. It says in the verse, "Ba'boiker zera zarecha, ule'erev al ta'nach yadecha." That in the morning plant your seed, and in the evening don't let your hands down. Don't relax. Ki eincha yedea ezev mehem yichshar. You have no way of knowing who is going to be successful. You think you raise children or Talmidim in your youth, you think that they're going to carry on. You can rest on your laurels. You don't know. It may be that those will fail, and everything will be riding on the Talmidim you raise in your old age. So this is what the Gemara says. Why did they die? 24,000 Talmidim, why did they die? So the Gemara says something surprising. The Gemara says, "Shlo nohagu kavod ze lezeh." They did not give honor to one another. They didn't give honor to one another. So the Welt, so to speak, the world asks the question: how is it possible the disciples of Rabbi Akiva didn't give respect to one another? We know that Rabbi Akiva once said, "V'yohavta l'reacha kamecha," to love your fellow man like yourself. That's a verse in the Torah. Zeh klal gadol b'Torah. This is the most fundamental principle of Torah. To love your fellow man. So if Rabbi Akiva taught this, not only he taught it to his students, if we know it, they knew it. So if they held that to love your fellow man is the fundamental principle of Torah, how is it possible they didn't respect one another? The truth is that the question is a mistake. The question confuses two different concepts. There is love and there is respect. And love and respect are two different things. Just to illustrate, if you look in the Gemara Maseches Yevamos, on that same page, just a few lines further, the Gemara says an amazing thing. The Gemara gives a list of very, very nice things that a person should do. And it says like this. It says that about your wife, O hava kigufo, you should love your wife as much as you love yourself. Umechabda, and you should honor her yoser migufa, more than you honor yourself. So we see we're dealing with two different things. Love and honor are two different things. When it comes to love, there's an upper limit. You love your wife as much as you love yourself. When it comes to honoring her, you honor her more than you honor yourself. What's the difference between love and honor? The answer is very simple. To love someone means not to feel all warm and fuzzy inside. To love someone means that the well-being of another person is the object of my concern, of my deep, deep concern. So for a parent to love his children, that means that the welfare of the children, their health, their security, their safety, their development, is the object of my concern. That's what it means to love your children. Person loves his wife, it's the same thing, that her happiness, her well-being, should also be the object of my concern. Now, in theory, it would be possible to love someone more than you love yourself. In theory, you could say, yeah, I'm more concerned for my wife than for myself. I'm more concerned for my children than for myself. But the truth is, that is not a madrega that can be demanded. That is not something that can be expected of someone. In other words, the Chazal could not say you are mechuyev to love someone more than you love yourself. Most people put themselves very, very high up on the list of priorities. So to say that I should put someone even higher, that's taking it a little too far. So when it comes to loving your wife, Chazal say, love her as much as you love yourself. That her well-being should be as important to you as your own. That's love. Honor is something else. Honor is the recognition, the acknowledgement that there is something special about that person. And for that, I give that person honor. It's an amazing thing when you think about it. We tend to love the people who are like us. We tend to honor the people who are not like us. As who do I care about? Who am I concerned for? The people with whom I have a lot in common. Members of my family, members of my community, people I've grown up with, and so on and so forth. Because my love and concern usually extends itself to people who are like myself. Who do I respect? I respect people that have qualities that I don't have. In other words, if I can play the piano and you can play the piano, big deal. I can do that too, right? But if I can't play the piano and you can play the piano, play the piano. In other words, we tend to give honor to the people that have something or can do something that we can't do. And that's pasha, because if you think about the definitions, that's what it is. Love is concern. Love is caring for the other person, interest in the other person's well-being. So of course, since you are most important to yourself, so the people who are like yourself also are very important to you. When it comes to respect and acknowledging the uniqueness of someone, to the contrary, we respect the things that are different, that are special about the other person. The Talmidim of Rebbe Akiva certainly loved each other. They loved each other. They would give each other the shirt off their backs. Why? They were Talmidim of Rebbe Akiva. Rebbe Akiva taught, of course they loved each other. But they didn't respect each other. They didn't see them as being special. Now, when you think about it, the numbers might have made a difference. Whenever you have 24,000 people doing the same thing, how special can it be? How special can it be? You know, you meet a person and you discover this person has a PhD from Harvard, you say, wow, that's special, because very few people have that. If you meet a person and say, see this person? He breathes. Okay, everyone breathes. There's nothing special about that. Because it could be precisely because there were 24,000 Talmidim in Rebbe Akiva. That's why they didn't have cover for each other. So when Rebbe Akiva did it the second time around, it wasn't just because at this time he was old, he didn't have the kayak anymore for 24,000 Talmidim. He understood that if it's important that they be covered, then you have 5 Talmidim. When you have 5 Talmidim, that the entire Torah is being perpetuated by 5 people, then you understand each of those people is very special. That's the kavod of a Jew, to see the uniqueness, see what's special. But when it comes to Torah, there's also an idea of kavod, and this is a very interesting thing. When the Gemara in Maseches Pesachim says a very, very surprising thing about Shavous. There's a machlokes tanoim, there's a dispute among the sages of the Mishnah, whether there's an obligation to feast on Yom Tov. We assume that it's pashut, that a person is obligated to have a su'udas Yom Tov, a Yom Tov meal. There's really a dispute. Rebbe Eliezer says, in theory, if a person would want to fast on Yom Tov and observe it totally in a spiritual manner, it would be his option. He would have to do it. You have a choice. You can make Yom Tov however you want it. You can make it kuloi l'Hashem. You can designate it as being totally for God, or kuloi lochem, totally for yourself. There's a range of options. Rabbi Yeshua says, no, you have to have a Suda. You have to have a feast. It has to be chatzi l'Hashem, the chatzi lochem. It has to be half and half. But you must have both components. You have to have the spiritual component. We go to shul, we daven, we learn. But you also have to have the Suda. That's Rabbi Yeshua, that's how we follow. But Rabbi Eliezer says, you have the option. But says the Gemara, there's one Yom Tov which is an exception. Shavous is the exception. Hakol Moedim B'Atzeres. When it comes to Shavous, everyone agrees you have to have a Suda. Why? Yom Shnitna B'Torah. It's the day the Torah was given. So of course you have to have a feast. So the question is asked to the contrary. If this is the day that the Torah was given, what more appropriate way to celebrate the giving of the Torah would it be than to devote the entire day to Torah study, spiritual pursuits, prayer? Because why have a meal? Because it's the day the Torah was given, you have to have a meal. So the answer is this. Learning Torah is very, very nice. But the su'uda of Shavous, the meal of Shavous, is kavod HaTorah, is the honor of Torah. We want to honor a guest. What do? We roll out the red carpet and we put out a spread. So Shavous, the su'uda of Shavous is a demonstration of kavod HaTorah. It's a demonstration of the honor of Torah. And that's why you have to have it. Because it's the day the Torah was given, you have to give it honor. And the Gemara Megillah says a very interesting thing. The Gemara Megillah says that learning Torah is not as great as the honor of Torah. And the Gemara says it's a very interesting thing. When it comes to Purim, the Gemara says that the mitzvahs of Purim supersede the mitzvah of learning Torah. Mevatlam Talmud Torah l'mikra Megillah. You put aside Torah study to go and hear the Megillah. But the Gemara says that the eulogy of a Talmud Chacham, let's say a Talmud Chacham dies, and the funeral is going to be held on Purim, so you think it's appropriate to have a eulogy on Purim? The Gemara says that the eulogy of a Talmud Chacham is conducted on Purim. It pushes aside Purim. So Purim supersedes the learning of Torah, but the eulogy of a Talmud Chacham, which is the honor of Torah, the Gemara says, supersedes Purim. Pardon?
I've heard you say that before. It's just so counterintuitive, eh?
That's the idea. The idea is, see, let me tell you how Rav Foot Nezek Baruch once brought it out. He said like this: there's a verse in Mishlei which says like this: Kematzreif lakesef v'kakur lazov ish l'fi mahalolo. Let's say you want to test the purity of a sample of metal. So you have gold. Is it pure gold? Is it mixed with impurities? So you melt it down in a vessel which is called a matzreif. It's a crucible. If it's silver, then the name of the vessel is called a kur. Different types of vessels. You melt down the sample. So now that it's liquefied, the impurities rise to the top, the heavier metal sinks to the bottom, and this is how you test the purity of the sample. So that's if you want to test metal. What if you want to test a person? So Gever Lefi Mahalola, you test a person by his praise. Most Mefarshim learn that means you test a person by what people say about him. If you want to know what a person is, see what they say about him on the street. Find out about his reputation. That's a pretty good clue to where the person really is at. I know most people say, oh, how could you trust popular opinion? Maybe everyone's got it wrong. People know. Now they tell a joke. There once was a chazan who came to a city for a prova, for a trial. And he was staying at the president's house, the president of the congregation's house. So they come home from Shul Shabbos morning, the president, the prospective chazan, and the president's wife didn't come to Shul. So when they come into the house, she says, how did it go? So the president said, I'll tell you the truth, it was awful. The chazan standing right there. So the chazan's very embarrassed. So the wife says, don't mind him, he just repeats what he hears in Shul. But, if everyone in Shul says that the chazan can't sing, you have to suspect that maybe it's true. That's how everyone else learns. Rabbeinu Yonah in his Perush and Mishlei says a different pshat. He says, Gever Lefi Mahalolo. The test of a person is his praise, what the person praises. If you want to test a person, see what he praises. Now, there was a book that was published a few years ago. There's a woman who wrote a book. She did a lot of research into this phenomenon of teens going off the derech, teens at risk. Teens abandoning Yiddishkeit. And she interviewed a lot of these kids and, the issue and so on and so forth. But there was one interview that stuck in my memory. There was this, it was a girl actually, and they asked her, she was raised in a religious family, why did she give it up? So she said, my father always said the right things. Torah is important, and it's important to do mitzvahs and important to learn. But when he talked about the neighbor's new Lexus, that's when his eye really sparkled. Now that's Gever Lefi Mahalolo. Now that's a person you can measure by what he praises. As if he comes home from shul and says, the rabbi said a a drasha today, he said, pshat in a medrash. It was so beautiful. That's one thing. And if you say, oh boy, you should see the new car the neighbor has, it's really something. That's something else. Now, Footner says like this. He says, imagine you have two people. You have one person who learns in a yeshiva. He learns all day. He learns all day. And yet, he praises people who have advanced degrees, PhDs, or people that are multimillionaires, people that are successful politicians, etc. We have another person who, to the contrary, he doesn't have that much time to learn Torah himself. He's a working person, he has a career, a profession. But on the other hand, he's filled with praise for people who learn Torah, people who are Talmidei Chachamim, and so on and so forth. Which of the two is closer to the true value of Torah? Says the footnote, the second and not the first. The person could be learning himself all day. But if that's not what he praises, then there's something missing, something wrong. Whereas this other person, it may be he just doesn't have the time or the ability to devote himself wholeheartedly to Torah study, but that's what he praises. That's what's special to him. That is, you go into his house, those are the pictures on his wall. Gebirli Yisrael, Talmidei Chachamim, Tzadikim. Then that person is closer to the values of Torah. That's Ish Lefi Mahalol. The test of a person is his praise. You know, the kavod you have for something is more important than the mere engaging in it. And therefore, as important as it is to learn Torah, but the honor of Torah is even more important. So Shavous, you can't learn all day Shavous. You have to demonstrate your honor for Torah. You honor the Torah by having a feast. Now I point out also Simchas Torah. The Simchas Torah, you have hakafas, everyone's dancing and so on and so forth. All of a sudden you see there are people that have a big Yitzhar to sit and learn. They're at the sidelines on Simchas Torah reading Svarim. Some of these people don't crack a book on a regular basis. But all of a sudden Simchas Torah, there's a tremendous arousal to study Torah. It's a nice something. It's the Yitzhara. You know, the hakafas, the dancing of Simchas Torah, is the kavod, that's the honor of Torah. That supersedes learning of Torah. So the sudden, at that lofty time, we have the opportunity to demonstrate your respect for Torah. That's when the sudden convinces you, no, don't dance, don't show your respect for Torah, learn Torah instead. Mm-hmm. But learning Torah is not as great. But this is the idea that I'd like to bring out, that Shavous, the lead up to Shavous, is really a time for orienting our thinking in terms of kavod, in terms of the respect we have to have. First, for what it means to be a Jew. If you don't respect yourself, then you're not going to perform. You're not going to accomplish great things. So you have to respect yourself as a descendant of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, as being a worthy person, a person worthy of the gift of Torah. That's part of it. The Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva didn't respect one another. It was a tragedy. They died just during this time. And secondly, it's the kavod of Torah, the respect and honor for Torah. We have to recognize its chashivas, its beauty, its kedusha. And these are the preparations. So if it's an axiom that the days of Sfira are times of preparation, I think that this is really an important part of the preparation. It doesn't mean you have to think about it 24 hours a day. But if you think about it 5 minutes a day, it's 5 minutes that is being well used. And hopefully, with the hachanas, with all the preparations, we will be ready when Shavuos finally does arrive. Okay, thank you for coming. And Bezrat Hashem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next week.
Thank you very much.
Same time, same place.